We're on? Hello everyone, it's great that you can join us today. So I'm going to be talking to Simone, welcome Simone.
Hi.
About mental illness and mental health today. So Simone is very much a part of our team that we've just taken our Spice Strong program online. And so Simone has gone through her own journey. We all have journeys in life. We all have journeys in life where we go up, we go down. And so some of those down times can be hard. And particularly, Simone, I think you'd agree with me that if you haven't had that nurturing as a kid, that can be tough, can't it?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, it shapes you.
It does shape you.
Yeah.
So some of those experiences that we've gone through way back when we were a tiny kid can actually shape us for the rest of our lives. And even though we're in our 50s, 60s, 70s, and even till the day we die, that can shape us. And so soon we'll hear more of your story. I just wanted to give some just basic stats on people with depression. So there's 1 in 5 people with depression. And at some stage in our lives, we will all go through depression, whether it is mild depression, which I had way back years ago, where I couldn't, mine started out where I couldn't pick the plate that I wanted to get out to eat my toast on that morning, and I just found it a struggle to pick which plate I needed to get off. Like, who would think that would happen? And there was nothing major in my life, but that I had 4 kids over a short period of time, and I think I was just had my first kid, had a lot of colic and didn't sleep, and I think I was overwhelmed with no family support at all, and so that put me into a mild depression. I went to see about that, and I got some great help for that, so that was good at the time. But just having a bit of a talk about depression, it's more than just tearfulness or feelings of sadness. It involves quite a few symptoms that are intense and long lasting, and hopefully if you get good care earlier on, for some of you, hopefully it won't be long lasting, but maybe short lasting if it's a situational thing that something's happened. But being able to access the right help and support, which I think you'd agree with.
It's crucial. It's
crucial?
Absolutely crucial. Yeah.
And so again,
we'll talk about that soon. But
So we'll hear more about that in a moment. So some of the signs of depression, I've just taken off a site this today, is just not wanting to go out and take part in activities that were previously enjoyed, withdrawing of social contact from family and friends that you previously loved, finding it hard to get to sleep or concentrating, feeling overwhelmed, guilty or frustrated, experiencing really in negative thoughts, and feeling sick, tired or run down all the time. And so Spice Fitness that we are has 4 pillars, and we don't just believe that everyone can just do strength training or fitness, because if your head's not working for you, then many things in life won't work for you. So the 4 pillars of Spice Strong are strength. 1, we think you all need a strong body, strong mind. We need to nourish our body. In other words, what we take into our body in the way of nutrients can make or break us as well. It has to how good we're feeling. Belief. So we believe that you need to have a mindset that is a good mindset. So if there's some mental health issues, we need to be dealing with it. And I would promote amongst all my clients, and I think you would agree too, go get help. If you're not feeling good, if you feel that the joy you once had or life is not good right now and you're struggling to get through the days, you need to seek help. And again, we'll talk to Simone more about that in a moment. And the 4th one that we have as one of our pillars is restore. So we need to take time out of our busy lives, our busy schedules, because most of us are so busy, we get caught up in that. And take time out. So we need to physically restore our bodies, restore our minds. We need to get sleep. If we're not sleeping well, seek expert help, because I get annoyed myself sometimes when programs say you need to get enough sleep, but you know, it's easy to say that. Many of us, and I know both you and I, Simone, we don't sleep well.
No, we're terrible travel companions.
We're terrible travel companions, and often we'll compare tablets we've got for the night, but we've also got other things that we do to help our sleep. Sleep's important, and I needed to see about that myself not long ago when I was working night shift, not sleeping, and some personal things came up in the family, and I needed to take time out from work to focus on my sleep. So it is an important and crucial part of it. And time out, just time out. That's where you take a day walking along the beach, or you go camping. We often go camping.
Yes.
And what do you find about camping?
Oh, I love it. Yes, it's a little bubble of happiness, but sometimes you need that.
We do.
There's no stress.
No, and I agree with you because
any type of holiday.
Yeah, any type of holiday. And just for us, I remember one of our camping trips, just veering off tack for a bit, but we went to the Bay of Fires, which has got long white sandy beaches, and there was no one else around.
No.
Yeah, so we took up, I think, 3 camping spots.
3, was it?
I think, well, 2, but 2 big ones right on the beach. So we had our tents over in one camping spot and our gazebo and all of our kitchen area and lounge room area. I was
going to say, we had the bedrooms over there and then we had the lounge and the living room over there.
We stayed for 5 nights and lay out on the beach at 12 o'clock at night just watching the stars. I'll tell you, you don't do that sometimes at home. So how important it is to mental health, don't you think?
Yeah, it's the equivalent of smelling the roses.
It is.
You know.
Oh, we just came back so refreshed and revitalised, and I'll never forget. I think things like that store up in your mind as well as times that you had a wonderful time. Got lots of photos and songs that we played, and we had a great time. Went kayaking, swimming in freezing cold water, but it was so much fun.
It was great.
We had a ball. So that's just telling you a bit about Spice Fitness. We believe in those 4 pillars: strength. Strong. You need to nourish your body. You need to have a good mindset, believe, and then also restore, where you need to take time out. And so your mind can work for you or against you, and there's so many things that we need for mental health. So I'm going to come over to Simone now and just ask Simone to share a little bit of her story. And she's quite inspiring, actually, because I think sometimes to live with ongoing things in your life that you've got to deal with every day. I get up in the morning, I don't think too much about my mental health until it's not there. Some people are thinking about it more every day because it's there all the time. So Simone, tell us a bit about your story.
Okay, so my story is, so I'm 53 years old, and for the first 50 years of my life, I had no idea I had any problems. So a whole pile of stuff. I won't go into what happened, but over the course of a few years, I lost a lot of family members, lost my identity, which I'll talk a little bit more about soon. But yeah, so just over the space of a few years, ironically, from the moment that I met Sheree, everything started going downhill, but that's unrelated. Well, actually, it is partly related, but I'll come to that in a moment. So over the course of those few years, I personally started going downhill. Prior to that, I didn't know I had issues with depression and anxiety. Having spent a lot of time in psychological therapies, I've had 2 inpatient stays in psychiatric institutions, which I'll talk about as well. They're not that much fun. I don't recommend it. But yeah, I had no idea that I'd had a whole lifetime of dealing with depression and anxiety, but I just covered it up. And the person I am today is not the person that I was probably 5 years ago. So things for me started going downhill in about 2012.
And she met me.
When I met Sheree. So maybe I'll start with how I met Sheree. So Sheree was running her bricks and mortar business, Spice Health and Fitness, not far from where I lived. And I traipsed up those stairs in tears. I don't know if I was in tears before I got to the top of the stairs, but I was in tears shortly afterwards because I was desperate. I was never going to a gym again. I hated gyms. I'd been to gyms when I was younger and they were all full of girls that were super fit and wearing their lycra and probably have as many issues as I have, but I just couldn't tell from the outside. And all the boys that were, biceps and flexing, and they knew how to use the equipment and all that kind of stuff. So I was desperate.
They appear like they know how to use the equipment.
Well, they looked to me like they knew how to use the equipment, but I didn't. I had no idea how to use the equipment. I do now. So I traipsed up those stairs in desperation because I desperately needed to lose weight. So I have an eating disorder, which we'll get onto as well. But I was quite overweight and I was very unfit at that stage. I've always walked my entire life, which is great. And I know Sheree loves walking, but she'll also tell you in this very next breath that it's not enough.
Particularly as you get older.
Particularly as you get older. So I was at this time, I wasn't 50 at that stage, but I was pushing 50. So I traipsed up there, told Sheree my sorry tale, and then we both kind of cried. And then I thought, whatever, I'll join up. And I joined up and I went along and I fell in love with Spice Fitness straight away. This isn't an ad for Spice, by the way. It just happens to be where I'm going. Because it was a women's gym, but it was full of women that were just like me. So I can't remember seeing any Lycra. I don't remember seeing any Lycra, maybe occasionally, but they were just normal women. I mean, yes, sometimes there were young people, but there were loads of women that were 50, 60, 70, heaps in their 30s and 40s. There were women that were really, really unfit, and there were women that were really strong and fit. There were women that were overweight. There were women that were skinny. They were just normal. They were just like you.
And all enjoying themselves there too, weren't
But
they?
that's what I fell in love with, was the people. So, so I have a blog, and I've just finished the first draft of my memoir, and in that, the thing that I wrote was that I fell in love with the people. I did not fall in love with the exercise straight away. That came later. But it was just a community of people that supported me. So that's how Sheree and I met. And then over time, as my mental health declined, you noticed. You're one of the few people that noticed. So when I had a complete nervous breakdown, people would say to my husband, what do you mean Simone's had a nervous breakdown? What do you mean all this is happening? They thought that was impossible, that wouldn't happen to me. And I have to say, for most of my life, I thought that wouldn't happen to me either. That happens to other people. But as it turns out, I am other people. You are other people. We are all other people. We all think that things might happen to us. So, you know, you might not experience a death or cancer or whatever. Everyone, I'm sure, when they're given a diagnosis or a whatever, thinks, well, that wouldn't happen to me. But it did. Yeah. So my story, just unpacking it, going back a long way. So I've had disordered eating since I was a baby, really. So my mother died in 2009 from breast cancer, and she had many strengths. She was a lovely woman, but she was also heavily had a huge emphasis on how you look and how you eat. And I was not a slim child. I didn't have an athletic... I was 10 pound 10 when I was born.
So lots of rolls.
So lots of rolls. And my babies were 10 and 11 pounds. My first one would have been over 12 pound if he'd been full term. Yeah. But he was 10 and a half pound because he was early.
Yeah, so can I just interrupt for a moment?
Yeah.
And so does somebody out there that does not have disordered eating thoughts would think that a 10-pound baby was gorgeous? You kind of go, oh, all those rolls, it's gorgeous. But somebody with an eating disordered pattern of thinking will think, oh my gosh, that's horrendous. I've got to slim them down as soon as I can. So they just think very, very differently.
And that's exactly what my mum did. So I look back now, because I had a lot of resentment about some of the things that she'd said and done as I was growing up, as I'm sure we all do. You know, you remember whatever, a fight with your mother when you were 15, and then by the time you're 50, you kind of go, okay, right, well, you know, I'm a grown-up now. So you know, I've long kind of moved past it, but the way I was shaped as a child impact me now. So it's not so much she did this to me, but so when I was a few weeks old, because I've got my baby book at home, she wrote that I was, you know, that she loved me dearly and I had blue eyes and my lashes were darkening or something, but that she needed to slim me down. And it came from a place of great love, because for her it was important and she's a very beautiful, very petite woman, but for her it came from a place of love, because you needed to be beautiful in order to be successful and accepted in life. And so that was a message that was given to me and given to my sister. I can't honestly say if I know my brother was impacted by that, but my brother and sister had my dad's build, which was very kind of skinny and athletic. My dad was a professional runner and professional musician. I did not have that build. And I'm never going to have that build. So I could starve myself to death and be skin and bone, and I'm still not going to be the shape that my sister was. I'm not going to be Sheree's shape. I'm not going to be your shape. We're all different. So my shape is the shape that I was born with. Anyway, so that shaped me, and I don't want to go into too much detail about all those years, but there were lots of things that gave me very disordered thoughts about eating. So I have spent a lifetime being overweight, being not overweight. I've gained and lost 34 kilos, up to 34 kilos 3 times now. I had a gastric lap band fitted in 2012. which I had removed at the start of this year because I had issues with it. So I've gained and lost a lot of weight. I became bulimic in my early 20s. So I had the proper eating disorder. If you're anorexic or bulimic, people think you have an eating disorder. If there's anything else, they just think that you're, I don't know, too lazy to know how to eat properly or something. But eating disorders go far beyond just bulimia and anorexia. And as a nurse, I'm sure you've seen lots of it as well. So I was bulimic in my when I was young, and I had that on and off over the years. The lap band became surgical bulimia for me, and I don't want to go into whether lap bands are good or bad, whether surgical bariatric kind of stuff is good or bad. But for me, I loved it and I hated it. So for me, it did not help my mental health. So that came in the same year that my sister died. I got the lap band. But I'd also had issues. So I think I talked with my psychologist about this quite recently, but I never knew I had anxiety until I had nervous breakdown. And now I realise that my anxiety is really, really high. So when I found out that I have issues with depression and anxiety, at first I said, no, that's my mother and that's my sister. I don't have depression, I don't have anxiety. But I do. I just had numbed those things away with food. I'd numbed those things away with other behaviours. So, yeah, when I had my complete nervous breakdown, do you want to know the details of that?
Yeah, just before you go into that too, can I just say to you at home, if somebody, so hold on to that thought.
Sure.
I remember when Simone, so she said she's lost weight, gained weight, lost weight, gained weight. Can I ask you, when somebody's lost a whole lot of weight, you do not know that they come from a good place in their head at that time. So lots of people were doing what they thought was the right thing. And when Simone lost a whole lot of weight now, Jim, and I knew that Simone wasn't taking in any food at all. I knew that her food intake had stopped. She wasn't in a good place. Her head was in a very bad place. And people were saying, oh, you're looking so great. Well done. Oh, man, look at the amount of weight you've lost. So can I just make a suggestion for those of you out there who are concerned about someone's mental health? I will never tell somebody that they particularly have lost a whole pile of weight, but I will just maybe say you look healthy, because my whole concept and my whole thing about life is about having a healthy body, healthy mind. It's not about weight loss per se. It's about, if you carry a bit more weight, you could be the healthiest you'll ever be. It's not about the size. So just be careful when you make a note about someone's size or shape or how much weight they've lost. Could really trigger off some really bad thoughts inside their head. So more just say, look, I don't know what you've been doing, you're late, but you look well, you look healthy. Don't focus on the weight. It's not where we want to go.
That's good. So I'll talk a little bit maybe while I'm here. This might go all over the place. About triggers. So as someone with an eating disorder, and I still have issues with this, I'm probably in a better place. I'm in a better place than I was. I'm definitely in a better place than I was. But I will say there are lots of things that are very triggering. Any comment about weight is always triggering, whether you're commenting about your weight or whether you're commenting about my weight. So people that sit there and go, oh my gosh, I've lost so much weight and I feel so much happier because I've lost this, this and this. It's a very, very fine line between making that your identity and making that really important. And it's just gosh, I was really overweight. I was really unfit. I was eating really badly. I was living at KFC, whatever, and going, I've changed my lifestyle and I've lost a few dress sizes. Because I know sometimes through the gym we've seen people come in who've no intention to lose weight because they're not overweight. They come into the gym, they get strong, they change their lifestyle a little bit and they just coincidentally lose a dress size or two. That's very different to somebody that's super focused. So when you're super focused on weight, and it is a really fine line and it's very tricky. The other thing, when you're super focused on weight, it will be triggering for me. When you put before and after photos up there, it's triggering for me. And it's not just me.
On Spice Fitness, we won't be doing that.
there was that lady, I can't remember her name, but she came out with the Embrace film,
Yes.
and she shocked the world when she put a before and after photo, where the before photo was her, she's doing a bodybuilding competition, but she was very slim and in a bikini, and her after photo where she's happy, she's not fat.
She had some kids by that
She'd
time,
had a couple of kids, and she looked like a normal woman in her 30s that's had a couple of kids and isn't stick thin.
Yeah.
And she shocked the world because her before and after photo was the wrong way round. But the other thing that's very triggering are numbers. So, and I know in the day and age of Facebook, people like to go, oh my gosh, I'm down to, I won't even say a number, you know, because a number, for one thing, depending on how high you are, a number on the scales, you know, I was this many kilos and now I'm this many kilos and my goal is to get to this many kilos. If your goal is to get to a particular number of kilos, then I will say to you that when you get there, you won't be happy with that goal. You might think you will be, but you won't be. If your goal is to get fitter and healthier, to fit back into a pair of jeans you used to wear, that's a little bit different. Yeah. But if your goal is that I have to be such and such a number, and my goal number, which I still can't get out of my head, is a number that I had when I was 16. Wow.
That happened. You look awful.
So numbers are really triggering, and I would say, I know people do it all the time and it comes from the best of intentions, but I would discourage anybody from ever putting their weight on Facebook, and thinking, why do I need to make that public? Which is very different to, obviously people sometimes need to lose weight for whatever reason, and there's nothing wrong with feeling fantastic because you've done it for the right reasons and you've done it for whatever. But if you have to publish it in the newspaper and tell people exactly how many pounds you've lost, kilos, ounces, whatever you've lost, then you might want to look at your thought processes. Between 2009 and 2015...
Can we just run back to that? So the before and after pictures, we will always do somebody able to lift a bigger weight rather than... So that's where we go. And it's all about just being the best you can be, being healthy, being strong. So so I just want to add that in there. And so scales, reminding you as well, scales do not tell the full picture. You'll see somebody that has lost 2 or 3 dress sizes that weighs exactly the same on the scales a year down the track, but they've lost 3 or 4 dress sizes. The scales tell you nothing, reminding you that. They tell you nothing. They don't tell you whether you lost that fat percent or what they've done. So many people that start strength training will build a wonderful body, but they weigh more because it weighs more. So if you build up some muscle, it weighs more than fat. And so it doesn't tell you the whole story. So scales, what Simone's done now, what somebody did to her, they stole her scales. She has no scales. She has
naughty husband.
And she almost bought some more, but the thing is she didn't. So good on her. You do not need scales. So going back.
Yeah, so, sorry, well, you reminded me about scales. Yeah. So I won't read it out, but I did write like a piece of prose on... called The Scales of Justice, where, I stand upon the scales of justice every morning, and that I would stand upon the scales every single day without fail until in a moment of strength I sent my husband a message at work going, can you please remove the scales from my house and hide them? And you did a very good job, darling, because I cannot find them. And that was a couple of years ago. No, they appear every time we need to weigh luggage. Okay. I don't know where they are. I've looked.
Well. Maybe in the roof. Roof cavity?
Good idea. I'll give that a go.
No, I shouldn't have said.
We don't have a roof cavity. But so those scales every single day of my life for years and years and years and years determined what my day was like. And it didn't. So if I lost weight, and I unpacked this in beautiful words in my prose, but if I gained weight, then I was disgusted with myself. I was so unhappy. It ruined my day. The internal dialogue was, you're fat, and et cetera, you can imagine. And then I would often indulge, and that would be an excuse to engage in disordered behaviour, disordered eating behaviours, either from a restriction point of view, I can't eat because I'm 100 grams more than I was yesterday.
And that can be a bit of a poo. Poos can weigh up to 800, 900 grams. Just be aware of that.
Or if I've lost weight, it didn't help either. Like I'd be happy, so I'd feel happier if I'd lost weight. But then I need to, but I can't eat because I've lost some weight. So I need to keep maintaining how I got there, because I got the weight off in a disordered manner. So obviously I'm talking about people with disordered eating here, not your average person. So I don't have scales anymore, and I also wrote a piece that got published in the in Mamma Mia, the online magazine, about this is a picture of my toes pointing at the space where my scales used to be. So, and that was a couple of years ago. So I don't have scales anymore. I have to say I'm not fully cured from my diseases yet, because I do miss them and I wish I had them. But I know that they're very, very bad for me. So that's scales. Anyway, depression and anxiety, from my 2 stays in the clinics, I know I'm all over the shop here, but from my 2 stays in the clinics, I can say that people who had any type of mental illness, there were people in there with also lots of people recovering from addictions, drug and alcohol addictions. There were people with bipolar, schizophrenia, borderline personality disorder, severe depression, anorexia, bulimia, whatever. So obviously in a psychiatric clinic, I'm sure there are other mental illnesses that I haven't named, but anyway. But everyone had levels of depression, and everyone had levels of anxiety to some degree, some more one than the other. So depression and anxiety are things that to some degree I think everybody, whether you've had mental health issues or not, you would understand. My own fall from grace, my own metamorphosis into who I am now, and I don't even know who that is. So I was a musician my entire life. And in 2016, because of my mental health issues primarily, I had to stop teaching. I was kind of ready to teach anyway. I taught for 36 years. I was a flute player, in case someone's going to go, what did you play? So I was a classical flute player, and I taught music for a long, long time. But with all the external things happening, there were heaps of them. But for someone else, it could be something completely different. So what caused me to fall apart is my personal story. What causes someone else to fall apart will be their story. But yeah, depression and anxiety are common for everybody. So let me just go what it's like to have a nervous breakdown. So I was a perfectly normal human being, so I thought. And then all these things happened. All these people died. My kids were teenagers. I think that sums up that bit. My marriage was having some difficulties, as many do when you're in your mid-40s and you've got teenagers. I know there are other things happening, and I can't remember what they are off the cuff. And my coping mechanisms were going downhill. So my ability to cope with those things deteriorated. And by deteriorated, I meant that for me, that meant escalating disordered eating. For someone else, it might be drinking too much wine at night. For someone else, it might be taking drugs. Whatever your
vice is.
Whatever your vice, that's the word. So that deteriorated. You start isolating. So I think you mentioned there at the beginning one of the symptoms of depression. So you start isolating, but you don't know that you're doing it because we're all busy. We live in a busy world. Everyone's busy. Yeah. So you just think, oh, I'm tired. I'm not going to go to this. I won't go to that. Thank you for the birthday party invitation. No, I won't go. Oh, I'd love to go to that movie, but I'll wait till it comes out on Netflix and watch it at home in my pyjamas. So you do that.
Sounds like me all the time.
Yeah, I love Netflix in my pyjamas. So you start isolating, which is the worst thing. So we'll get to what you should do later on, but isolating is really bad. But you don't necessarily realise that you're doing it. So sometimes you think it's time out, and maybe it is time out for a period of time. But once you start isolating and you're cutting yourself off, then you've moved into a problematic behaviour. I developed other, if I play so I have an addictive nature. So if I play a game on my phone, I got to level 3,000 in Candy Crush in a very short period of time, which I was terribly proud of.
For someone that's never played Candy Crush, that obviously sounds good. Is it
it's not good. Anyone that's played Candy Crush would know. There's probably a lot more levels than that, but it meant playing day in, day out.
Wow. Okay.
Day in, day out. I didn't spend any money on it. I didn't. Don't worry, my husband.
Buy anything on it.
I didn't spend the money on it. But so it's just a way of avoiding emotions. So you're doing anything to avoid having to sit and think about your own emotion. Again, millions of people are out there spending a bit of time on a bus playing Candy Crush or whatever today's latest game is. and that's fine. It's when it impacts your life, when you have to sit up until 4 o'clock in the morning because you've got to finish this level, when it's impacting your relationships, when it's impacting everything, then it's a problem. So I had all these different ways of avoiding emotions, just anything that it could be. And part of it was going to the gym. So I would go to the gym, which is a healthy way of avoiding emotions. When you're at the gym, it's a very mindful activity. I loved the gym. I still love going to the gym. And it saved my life, quite literally. So yeah, I'm getting distracted. Anyway, so all those things were happening. My anxiety levels were getting higher and higher. I realised looking back I'd had panic attacks when I was young, like late teens and whatever, but I had a panic attack where Sheree called an ambulance for me, so that was extremely embarrassing. In the middle of when my hands wouldn't move, then I really did start to panic. Prior to that, I thought it was a panic attack. Yeah. Then I thought I was having a stroke.
And I'm a nurse, and I was a little bit panicked because she could barely talk. She was barely breathing. She couldn't feel her fingers or her feet at the time.
They wouldn't move?
Yeah, they wouldn't move. They were locked.
Yeah.
And I thought, time to call an ambulance. So we did. Yeah.
That was not the highlight of my week. So by then things were deteriorating. Sleeping, so I have a sleep disorder. So I have restless leg syndrome, which sounds benign, but mine's really bad. So I have a lot of medications for that. But for people with depression, they'll either not sleep at all, or they'll sleep too much, or they'll move between the two. So I would move between the two. I'd be awake for days and days and days on end, and then I'd just sleep all the time. By the time I was admitted to the clinic, the first time, I only got out of bed to go to the gym for an hour a day. That was it. The rest of the time, I either lay on the couch or I went to bed.
And then you didn't eat either?
So I'm getting to that. Gotcha. So most of my life I've binged, and I never thought I'd restricted my food intake. But when I talked to a lady who runs some eating disorder groups and stuff, who was a recovered anorexic herself, she said, of course you've restricted. Every time you're on a diet, you're restricting. If you want to know a weird diet, just send me a message and I'll tell you all about it. But every time you go on a diet, you're restricting. Every time you go, carbs are bad, you're restricting. Every time you go, I'm not doing this, this and this, you're restricting. So again, there's a big difference between making a lifestyle change that's healthy and that you can sustain forever, and going, I'm just going to live on rice forever, or I'm only going to have liquids, I'm going to live on diet shakes, or whatever random rule that you come up with that's going to suit you. So I'd done that. So I never thought I'd restricted. But then prior to my admission to the clinic, I went into complete restriction. I stopped eating. So initially I was just cutting it down. Because I had the lap band, by this time it was surgical bulimia. I was throwing up 20, 30 times a day more. Had to have it replaced a couple of times. Then you get tired. If you've never vomited bile, which I think most of you probably haven't, it looks like Coca-Cola and it tastes like petrol. So you don't want to do that very often. It's gross.
Green is bile, dark green.
It was disgusting.
But maybe, yours might have been a bit different.
I had there was no, I don't know, it looked disgusting. It gave me a bit of a fright. I went to the hospital again for that one. It tastes feral. Anyway.
Can I ask you something though, in the middle of this? How do you feel when you don't eat for days on end?
Oh, well, you won't like the answer.
I'm somebody that doesn't know, because I can't do that. I would feel sick at the end of the day if I didn't eat.
So there's what's called a restriction high. I'm really conscious of not triggering people.
Yeah, gotcha.
So
okay, we won't go too much.
So people that will restrict, you can become addicted to anything. I read of a lady that was addicted to nutmeg, a lady that was addicted to poppy seeds. If you watch the show My Strange Addictions, people are addicted to Vaseline.
You're right.
So I guess what you can say. The only thing I'll say is that you can become addicted to anything, and it's called a restriction high. But no, I don't get I don't feel nauseous. Yeah, okay. I don't feel nauseous with it. But yeah, prior to going into the clinic, I'd stopped eating. I had eaten no food whatsoever for 2 weeks, and I'd eaten almost nothing for 6 weeks. And I'd been in this rapid period of weight loss. And I think Sheree mentioned before how frustrated she would get when people would make comments going, wow, you look great, you've lost all this weight. And that's how my bulimia started, was people complimenting me back when I was 20s, a million years ago, saying, oh, sorry, that's not how it started, but that's how it got reinforced, because I was at that point in time, I was over exercising, was trying to restrict, couldn't control myself. So I thought, every time you try and restrict, you end up binging, because you just end up in this really bad mindset. And then you get people saying, wow, you look really good. You can get into a pair of jeans that are a size smaller, and it all just reinforces the disordered behaviour. So, yeah, like Sheree said, you've got to be really careful. I mean, when people lose a lot of weight, they want you to notice. But then you've got to ask, why do they need you to notice? So, yeah. Anyway, I went into the clinic because my depression was sky high. My anxiety was through the roof.
I was about to use those words too, through the roof.
Through the roof.
Through the roof.
And I'd stopped eating, and I was unsafe, was the bottom line for me going into the clinic. Gave my husband and my family and my friends respite. The gym, up until that time, because I know I've had friends say to me, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me what was going on? It's really, really hard to talk. Well, I'm not very good at it. Some people are good at talking about, I'm really good at writing stuff down, but I'm not so good at talking about my feelings. So I'm really happy in hindsight to say, look, this happened to me. I have an eating disorder. I now have issues with depression. I'm having issues with anxiety. If you sat here now and said, well, what emotion are you feeling right now? I just have to go and get my little emotion wheel and go and tick some boxes. So if you went on to that kind of stuff, I'm not very good with it. So getting people who are struggling with their mental health to talk to you is not always easy. And the better that you know somebody, the harder it can be, because you're laying a burden upon those, and you don't want to burden the people that you love the most. You know that they're worried, and if you say, well, this is actually what I'm thinking, then you know they're going to worry even more.
Which, can I just say, is wrong. You need to be able to tell the people that are close to you that there's a big problem, because they can be part of your help and support network. Keep going.
Yeah, thank you. But at that time, I didn't. So I knew Sheree through gym. She was my trainer. And we kind of but we weren't going camping and stuff at that. We weren't friends. But I thought she was a very nice person. Still do. But because she wasn't a close friend, but she knew what was going on, because she's a nurse as well, I felt comfortable telling her, what was going on. And then she'd pull me behind after class and say, just hang on, let's sit on the fit balls and have a little bit of a chat. And so she would get to hear a lot of what was going on. So that gave me a chance to unpack, which brings me to a really important point. I know I'm going to go all over the place because my head goes a million miles an hour. Silence equals shame. So when you stay silent, and this is why I now don't hesitate to talk to people about it. This is probably the most public I've been. But when you're silent, it's because you don't want people to know. If you refuse to tell somebody something, you don't want anybody to know something, there's a level of shame going in. Unless it's a secret birthday party for somebody, then it's a good thing. But then you're probably telling people. If there's something that you don't tell anybody, then you feel ashamed about it. I think that we forgot to say at the beginning that I am a musician. I'm not a qualified psychologist. I'm not a mental health expert. I purely have lived experience. But that is my experience of other people and of my own experience, is when people stay silent, there's a level of shame. So you do need to talk it out. Having said that, you have to be careful who you talk to. And when people are younger in particular, because I know I've talked to people in clinics and different places who are in their early 20s, and they try and talk to their friends about depression, and they'll go, just go for a run and you'll be fine. I just have a little bit of chocolate and I'm fine. I just changed my diet and you'll be fine. Now, all those things help, and we will talk obviously about the importance of exercise in my mental health and in anyone's mental wellness. But if you're very unwell and you've got a lot of things going on, going for a run is not going to cure your clinical depression. It's not going to make it worse, but it's not going to cure it. And so a lot of young people in particular have no one to talk to. But even there were older people in the clinic that were my age that had husbands and friends, not one person who understood, who just judged them and said, just pull yourself together. Just, I wake up every morning and I think happy thoughts. If it was as easy as that, we would be doing it. And I used to think of when my children were little, and people would say, look, if you just do this with your 3-month-old baby, he'll be fine, he'll sleep through the night, or he'll do this. And you think, if it was as simple as one solution fixed everything, after all this millennia, we'd all be raising our children the same way. So there's never one size fits all for everybody. Anyway, I've digressed again. So I went into the clinic, I had a complete nervous breakdown, depression. Can you remember what I was talking about? Okay, I just want to talk about depression versus, so clinical depression versus...
So I think, so you've gone through a fair bit of your life, so I think if we do get onto that, that'd be great. For someone out there that you think, look, I'm more than sad. This has been going on for a while for me, and I'm struggling. I don't even know where to turn. Where's your first point of call? Maybe we can talk on some of that, Simone.
So sadness is a normal human emotion. If you don't experience sadness, I'd expect that you need to trot along to your nearest psychologist and say you've got some emotional dysregulation happening. So sadness is a normal human emotion that we all experience. And I think you mentioned before that you'd experienced some levels of depression. And I think if you get old enough and wise enough, everybody's probably gone through periods of depression. Clinical depression needs help in the same way. It's like an asthmatic, it's like the difference between short of breath because you've run up the hill and being asthmatic. There comes a point where if you don't treat it, it's going to kill you. So, and how that gets treated is very individual. I personally went onto medications, and I personally don't like being on medications. Every time I try and go off them, it has not worked well for me.
No, not good. Other
people will manage a clinical depression and other things without medication, but it's not for me to say who can do what and who can't do what. No. So you've got to find that professional help. So sadness is normal. Everyone deals with sadness in their own way. Depression, to some degree, is something most people will experience. I think 1 in 5 will experience
at some stage
in their lives.
Yeah.
But clinical depression is different, and there's chemical changes go on because it's sustained. So there's chemical changes go on in the brain, and you need to change. Those chemical changes need to be reversed. Diet and exercise are huge. So, because there's also mental illness versus mental health versus mental wellness.
So what are the difference between mental illness and mental health?
So if you think of the difference between physical illness and physical health, everybody understands. You know, I have physical health. It's how I am right now. I might be ill. I might have a cold. I might have a chronic condition that doesn't go away. Mental illness and mental health are the same. Mental illness is... I don't like the word disease because I'm not sure if that's the accurate.
So you would include depression and things in
I think clinical depression and anxiety disorders are mental. To me, they're mental illness. Yeah. Having a level of depression is probably is your mental health. Yeah. But like if I get a cold and I get better, I've been ill and I got better. So some things you'll get better from. If you're diabetic, a type 1 diabetic, well, you're not going to be cured from that unless the Menzies Research Centre come up with something really amazing soon. But, so some things are chronic. And again, you obviously have to talk to medical professionals and professionals to know where it is. But the difference for me between health and illness is... I think of my dad when he had to have bypass surgery. He had to have 6 bypassy things on his heart. And he said to the cardiologist, why? I've looked after myself all my life. I ate really well. I've been a professional runner. I've been really active. He was really healthy. He's extremely healthy. But he still had this heart disease because there was genetics there. So he's genetically predisposed. Yep. But if he sat on the couch for his entire life and lived on fish and chips, then he probably would have dropped dead from a heart attack at 40.
You're right.
So we will all have a predisposition, which will come from nature and or nurture for mental illness or not. You know, our mental health will have whatever predispositions, just as our physical health will. Yeah. We will all have an inclination. Everybody's got something, you know. I've got a dodgy back and I'm hypermobile and, you know, whatever. I was kind of born like that. Well, the back came from other things.
But can I just interrupt there? So being a nurse too, as I have for 39 years or so, you will often see adults with depression. I reckon there's probably 1 in 3 that you see in beds with depression, and you kind of look what came first, and often they will get some chronic disease, chronic illness, or something that stops them from enjoying everyday life. That once they could, it could be diabetes is out of control. It could be arthritis that's gone out of control. Some things come against them, which so I think it's it's just a vicious circle. So they've ended up with depression, and I'll often look at notes of people. I'll go, are they depressed with all these things? Oh my gosh, yes they are. So I think it's a two-way street. Sometimes you'll have depression, and it can be helped by exercise and diet and all that. And sometimes you'll get the comorbidity first. You'll get the disease first, and then you'll become depressed. But if you can get that disease under control with diet and health, and that's not always the case, but in a lot of cases you can improve it at least, then you can help the depression at the same time. So sometimes it's a vicious circle.
It is, and I know we've talked about the 4 pillars that Spice is founded on, and there's an infographic somewhere, and I know that there's all got those little arrows that connect them, because it's strong, believe, move and nourish. Yeah. If you're not eating well, if you're not restoring yourself well through, good rest, mental rest as well as physical rest, if you're not moving well, and you haven't kind of got your head into gear, then your head's going to go out of gear. It's a two-edged sword, yeah. And of course, there are people that have things that happen to them, and or you might have an accident, you end up with chronic pain, and people in chronic pain often end up with levels of depression. They do. And it's not something that you can do anything about, but sometimes you can do things about it. So yeah. Anxiety is the other one, which sometimes people have a little bit more difficulty understanding. But anxiety is just another word for fear, really.
So describe what happens when you get anxious.
When I get anxious? So imagine that you're walking down the path and there's a bear coming after you. Turn around and you're just walking along and you're perfectly happy. I think there's a YouTube video of some guy on a bicycle. He turns around and there's a black bear. It's not in Australia.
Flying after him, out of the bush, coming,
that's anxiety.
After him.
Yeah, but that's justified anxiety, because your body goes into, and you probably understand the mechanisms better as a nurse, but your body goes into the fight or flight, or for me, freeze, which wouldn't be very helpful with the bear situation. But yeah, so that's a normal reaction. So anxiety comes, so it becomes a problem when you're anxious about things. Either you don't know why you're anxious, like when I had the panic attack that you called the ambulance for. I just had a perfectly good gym session. I was perfectly happy. I lay down on the floor to stretch and I couldn't breathe. And I just started to panic, and then I went and I didn't tell anybody about it because I'm not very good at talking about it. I lay on the floor in the toilets, which thankfully were very clean, trying to breathe, and then thought, oh look, I'll just go home, and then I couldn't breathe and my hands didn't work, somebody went and got Sheree. But there was no reason for that. There's probably a reason. If I had known how to unpack and go backwards, there would have been something that had happened 2 days earlier that I had not emotionally dealt with, that I just numbed out of existence or pretended didn't. I just pushed it down. So that's anxiety out of control. Anxiety can also be like normal, I guess. Anxiety is like, well, I'm getting married on Tuesday and I'm really nervous about it. What if it's going to rain and it's an outdoor wedding? What if my dress doesn't zip up? What if the cake falls over? And that's kind of normal. I think that's just a little bit of, because it's a big event, and everyone experiences that. But it becomes problematic when you go into panic attacks and stuff, and there are ways to deal with that. There are ways to deal with that. There are therapies for that.
Well, you believe it. You ground yourself by feeling your feet, feeling your hands.
So there are loads of tools out there, and over the years I've been taught heaps. So I've done a lot of dialectical DBT, which is dialectical behaviour therapy. And it was originally developed for people with borderline personality disorder, because they have a huge amount of difficulty regulating emotions. But there are lots of people that do DBT. I don't have borderline personality disorder. My sister did. So I also have lived experience of... so not everyone necessarily will develop major mental health issues, but almost everybody knows somebody that has. So my sister passed away when she was 40, and she'd had major mental illness as opposed to health issues her entire life. Well, from when she was a young teen. What was it? Oh, DBT. Yeah. So through DBT, the techniques that I will use if I start to panic is called grounding. Any type of grounding exercise. And what it's because anxiety is sometimes talked as living in the future, and depression is about living in the past, which is a very simplified way of saying it. However, it kind of what the tools will do is bring you into the present moment. So grounding is you press your feet into the floor so that you feel the floor, and then I try and use the 5 senses. So I do a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So you try and look at 5 things. So I just name 5 things I can see, 4 things that I can touch, and 3 things that I can hear, 2 things I can smell, and then I take 1 deep breath, because you can't always taste something. And it's not very good to taste things with an eating disorder. So that works really well for me. I know that in my DBT group, I've heard somebody say that when they're really distressed and things are out of control, that she'll, if she's out in the car or somewhere, she'll look at the number plates and she'll add up the numbers on the number plates. So it's anything that just distracts you from the panic, because your body, when you've got anxiety, even if you don't know what you're panicked about, your body has gone into a panic about something. So it's sending the exact same response as if the bear was chasing you, which is a cortisol, adrenaline rush, and I don't know what all the other medical stuff is.
But it stays there for a while rather than being
It stays there. It doesn't go away because the threat doesn't go away. Whereas if the bear's chasing you, once you hopefully get away from the bear, it will go, I'm sure it'll hang around for a little while, you have a cup of tea and then you kind of laugh about it with your friends and it will calm down. But when you're having anxiety and you don't know why, or if you don't know why, that's the hardest one, then you've got to ground yourself and you've just got to come into the here and now, because your thoughts will be in the future and you're catastrophizing about something. Even if you don't know what it is, sometimes it's simple as you're catastrophizing about having a panic attack. Or everyone's going to be looking at me, I'm in the supermarket and now I can't keep going and I'm shaking, or for me, I'm sitting on the footpath and everyone's looking at me and it's really embarrassing. You don't want to have a panic attack in public. You don't look at your most beautiful.
Just want to make sure that stays away from your microphone.
You don't look your most wrong way.
Yeah, no, just there.
So I use grounding. I've talked a girl through a panic attack, a friend of mine, through WhatsApp when we were chatting. She was kind of in a real panic. She was in the hospital and I said, tell me what you can find that starts with the letter A. And then we did B, and then we did C, and we went through the whole 26, and it took her a while to find some things that begin with Q. And it just, so again, it's just distracting. So most of the techniques will be grounding you in the present moment. There's an app called Breathe, it's an Australian one, but I'm sure there are others, but it's the simplest app. It's done by Reach Out something, and I have sat having a panic attack when I was working in a previous job where there was a wardrobe, a costume wardrobe, and I went down from work, banded my desk, went down, sat in the wardrobe, pushed myself to the back. I had Alice in Wonderland costumes in front of me. I felt like I was going through Narnia, through the wardrobe to Narnia, and I just looked at the Breathe app and I just followed it, which is just a big ball that goes out, a big ball that comes in, a big ball that goes out.
Maybe set some of these links in at the end. We'll attach them.
Because the physiological signs with is obviously your breathing goes really fast, and the reason that my hands went like that was I was getting no oxygen. Is that right? Lack of oxygen. Because you're breathing really fast. Your heart is going at a million miles a minute.
Carbon dioxide as well. Anyway, you're not getting rid of
the ambulance man told me, but I can't remember. I was a bit distracted. So they're all things just to bring you back. Obviously, the earlier that you deal with that kind of stuff, the better.
Sorry, I'm just going to move that over again, just to keep it away from your microphone.
Okay. There's a DBT, they use a lot of mnemonics in DBT, which is where you have letters next to each other, and one's called TIP, and each letter stands for something. And tip is one of my favourite ones, even though I don't always use it, but it's really easy to use if you're distressed. And I think you don't even have to be having a full-on panic attack for it to be useful. So the T stands for temperature, because when you get distressed, it also works for anger. So if you're really distressed, if you're full of grief, if you're full of anger, if you're going to want to punch someone in the face, if you're having a panic attack, whatever, T stands for temperature. They're hot things and you want to bring it down. So they tell you to put your hands into cold water or put your face into cold water. Just you want to get your temperature down. You do it for at least 10 seconds. I cannot for the life of me remember, don't go below such and such a temperature, because you obviously don't want to cause frostbite or something. But yeah, it's the same principle, I think, as throwing the hose on two dogs that are fighting. I stands for intense exercise, because you're just getting, I don't know why that works. Don't ask me why that works, but intense exercise. So if you can't go for a run because it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you're at home, you can
maybe because it releases endorphins and stuff.
I guess so. Yeah, and it's you tend, like when you're anxious, you're highly. I should take my necklace off. When you're highly anxious, you tend to be like you're very agitated and you're moving. So it could also be a release for that, but I'm only guessing at that, so don't quote me. The 2 Ps, there's 2 Ps in it. One is paired relaxation, so you consciously relax individual muscles while breathing, and the other one is paced breathing, so slowing the breathing down. So that one's really useful. Yeah, I know we don't have a lot more time. So, were there things you wanted to?
Yeah, so I just want to ask. So you've given us some tools for anxiety, and so I want to ask you: does everyone need to have a psychologist? Do you think? Should we all just go at least one time a year, even if life's going rosy, and go chat to a psychologist or a counsellor? What do you think on that?
I love my psychologist, my current one and my previous one. Yes and no. So yes, I was listening to a little talk earlier today that said it was a it's okay to be not okay, are you okay kind of day. And one of the things that he said, even when you're mentally really well, so if you think again, if you do the parallel with physical health, we hopefully look after our physical health, and we know how to do that. We teach that to children: eat well, move well, go to the doctor when you're sick, all that kind of stuff. That's exactly what you need to do for your physical health, your mental health. You need to eat well, you need to exercise well, you need to go to the doctor a couple of times a year for a checkup, even if you're not sick. Go to the doctor. Let them take your blood pressure, let them do, I don't know what they do in a checkup, just do that.
Just to make sure you're generally okay physically.
But also, it is really good to have a talk with a counsellor of some description. I don't know, my opinion is that not necessarily that you have to go to a psychologist. You need to go to because the thing with a psychologist is that you have to develop, it has to be somebody you feel that you can talk to. And so if you just go once, until you've met that person, you don't know if you can talk to them. But I do think you need to see somebody, whether that's going through someone through your church, whether it's a counsellor through a counselling service, whether it is a psychologist, and psychologists are very well trained, and I have the utmost respect for them, and I love mine to bits. And my answer to that is yes. And I think everybody, you don't have to have a mental illness, you don't have to be mentally unwell, you don't have to be mentally struggling to benefit from going to a psychologist. I've had friends go to psychologists because they just didn't know how to deal with problems their kids were having and whatever, so they've gone along for 3 sessions.
I would have been me just a short while ago.
I was actually thinking of a different friend, but yeah.
So maybe another friend, but I just went 3 times, and that was enough for me to kind of deal with things and go, oh, okay, so this isn't so bad. It kind of de-escalated it in my head and made it think, oh, this is quite normal. And so that was okay, and just gave me some, it just made me feel like I didn't need to think too much on it anymore. So that was good for me.
But I think the person that you talk to can't be a close friend or a family member, because that person is emotionally involved, or someone you work with. It needs to be somebody who hopefully, I would only recommend going to somebody that has some degree of training in counselling. You don't necessarily, I don't think, have to be a psychologist, but I think most people within mainstream churches, like pastors and stuff, do have counselling training. And obviously a counsellor has counselling training. So you need somebody that's impartial and can help you unpack what's in your head.
So going back to that, then the first step for that would be going to your GP because you need a referral. Most psychologists I found won't take you without a referral. I just wanted to go see someone without a referral, but there's not too many that will do that. So you just go to see your GP and they'll give you a mental health plan where I think you can see them for up to 5 or 6 times for a decreased cost.
Yeah, so you can go, so you get 6 sessions on a mental health plan, and then you can get, which Australian government, that's nowhere near enough, by the way, but you can get 6 sessions subsidised by Medicare, not fully subsidised, but quite heavily subsidised, and you can get an additional 4 if you need to. And
for you, Simone, what's good about somebody with an eating disorder now is the government have brought in new rules that you can get multiple sessions. Do you pay anything
40.
then? They're free?
It hasn't started.
Yeah, but it will.
That is starting on the 1st
free?
of November. No, so it's the same principle.
Yeah.
So instead of you getting a maximum of 10 sessions per year, you can get up to 40.
That's brilliant.
It's only for people with eating disorders. So mainstream treatment or best practice treatment of eating disorders says people need to be seen weekly, at least weekly. And that's impossible most of us can't afford to pay for that. And then you also, and so that package for the eating disorders includes a dietitian as well.
Fantastic.
So I haven't started that, but that will be something that I do. Yeah.
So good. Just going back, so I just want to talk to you guys just for a moment about somebody that was in my gym that couldn't go on to any antidepressants, but she badly needed them, but she had side effects every time she went on them. She just started to do some fitness, and in fact her fitness was dance fitness. So she would come in and it was just a really interesting journey that she made, because she said the first time I came in it was all I could do to not cry, and she said I did go to the toilet and have a cry because she was so quite deeply depressed, and her family had to watch her around the clock to make sure she didn't harm herself. Then she said the next time I came in I actually was able to get through the class without crying. And as she went along, she said, Sheree, within a couple of weeks, I could actually do the class and feel a little sprinkle of joy in there. And then she said, I went through the class and I could smile. So it was this journey for her. But it's amazing what moving your body, getting it fitter and healthier. And my main thing is to get a strong body, because a strong body will often help you to develop that strong mind as well. But it's great to see the progress that people make by doing, because I just meant to add that earlier when Simone was talking.
So I just want to talk really briefly, I know we're out of time, but the importance of the exercise, because I've written about it a few times. There is a website that I'll pop the information up into the description later, called The Mighty, that I've written for quite a lot. And I've written a couple of times about the importance of exercise. So up until, I think I said earlier, up until joining Sheree's gym, I'd always walked. I love walking, and I love walking up mountains, and I've always done a lot of bushwalking. So I don't just do a lazy walk for 5 minutes along the beach. Like, I'd always walk for an hour, and I'd walk really quickly. And I know that you'll say that's great, but you'll also say that's not enough. And it's not. But when I went to the gym, especially as my health was going down, it's incredibly mindful when I was talking to Sheree yesterday saying you cannot do a gym class. You shouldn't be able to do a gym class mindlessly. So if you're doing a kettlebell swing or you're doing push-ups or whatever, you need to be concentrating on what you're doing, or you're going to end up hurting your back or hitting yourself in the head with a kettlebell. All the rules that we've learned. So it's incredibly mindful. So when you have, even if we've all got chaos in our head, even if you've just had a really stressful day at work, just going somewhere, and I know a lot of people will go to the gym, it's their time out for the day. But when your mental health declines and you're struggling with the wellness, self-care will go out the window. And looking after your body, looking after your physical and your emotional and mental health goes out the window. And that's when it becomes really important to do the things that you don't want to do, to make sure that you eat proper food. And I know that I'm the pot calling the kettle black here because I don't always do that. I think most of us know what to do. So I know what to do, like most people, but don't always, when my mental health is struggling, don't always do it. But exercising is so important. And I think going to the gym and doing the strength training is great, and I need to do it, and I go as often as I can, but also going for a walk and just getting out and being active. So you can't just go to the gym and go, well, I've gone to the gym 3 times this week for 3 hours and the rest of the week I sat on the couch. There's also general movement, so it's kind of works both ways as well. So if you can't go to the gym, or you're physically, I know some people are physically not well enough to do some stuff for whatever reason, well, even just walking to the letterbox is better than doing nothing. So everything that you do counts, and as you would always say in classes, if you can lift a 6 kilo weight or whatever and swing it around, well then let's try an 8 kilo weight next time. So you're increasing. So if you can then easily walk, but it was really, really important to me. And when I was really ill, it was the only hour of the day I was happy, and it was the only hour of the day when my brain stopped catastrophizing, because for me, everybody was going to die. Everybody in my life was going to die. That was the big thing, because we'd had so many people die. And I kind of blew it out of, I'm quite good at blowing things out of proportion. I was going to say something else, but I forgot. But the exercise was really important.
We were going to come to that soon, but that's all right. You popped that
okay.
That a little bit earlier. What would you say, nature versus nurture? Do you think that people, you did touch on the genetic side of it. Do you think that people are born with an innate tendency to veer towards some mental health issues if they haven't looked after themselves properly? Do you reckon it's going to come out anyway? Just what's your thoughts on that?
Okay, so I'll just
very briefly
prelude this with I have no qualifications. My opinion, my opinion is that everybody is susceptible to nature. So I'm a highly sensitive person, and I believe I was born that way. So I think a lot of stuff. And when you're a highly sensitive person, you're not just emotionally sensitive, but you tend to be physically sensitive. So I'd get my legs waxed and I'd bruise everywhere.
I don't bother. Wax them, it's all good.
Yeah, I don't. So I certainly have, I believe, biological things, so nature stuff that would give me a predisposition to it. Just like my dad had a predisposition to requiring heart surgery. When he was 79, I will add, he was quite old, he was doing pretty well, and he's still alive and doing well. Hi, Dad. And nature, I think, nurture is the tricky one, because you can't control either. You can't control what you grow up with, and you can't control what was born, but you can control what you do now. So, you can have, if you think of it, I'll be really brief. If you have a child that had an IQ of 180, which is a lot, but they were raised being told they were the dumbest child ever and they're never going to get anywhere, until they get a lot older, they're going to think they're really dumb and they're never going to get anywhere, even though nature has said that they're very clever. So nurture in that case would say, you're not very bright, you're not going to get anywhere. If they're lucky, down the track, they'll figure it out, but they'll always probably struggle with that. Yeah. So we all struggle to some degree with what we grew up with.
Yeah. So I just wonder if anyone's asked anything in particular on there. No, just all good comments. Hi, Damon. Hi, Kim. Hi, Diane.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Can I ask you then, for the average person out there, Simone, this was mind-blowing to me. So what do you call it when you can stop something in its tracks from something I would do every day? Now, I'm not somebody that does drink much, by the way, but I'm just going to put a scenario out there. Or it could be someone that comes home. It could be someone that tends to come home from a busy day at work every day. You plan to have maybe one glass of wine, but you go to that one whole bottle of wine. Or you plan to just kind of go straight for that healthy meal. You've planned you've planned it. It's all in the fridge to cook, but you haven't done it. That lovely healthy meal with spinach leaves and maybe stir fry with the nicest, healthiest things. But you turn to chocolate instead, and you see that there's 2 blocks of chocolate in there, and you eat both of them. What are some things that you can do for the average person when they go that way every time? They know if they're hungry, for example, or if you come home from work and you're tired, what are some tools? And I know you give it a specific name where we can take that back a peg or two and stop it before we get to where we are.
I don't want to take credit for this. It's a CBT tool. It's called the chain analysis. So I had to do that for some more difficult behaviours than eating chocolate, where you start by going, this is what I did. So if you've done something that you feel if you don't think it's a problem, then, and it's not negatively impacting your life, it's not a problem. So, you know, drinking, eating chocolate, all these things, there's nothing wrong with it. So I would never want to say you shouldn't drink, you shouldn't eat chocolate. But when it starts to have a negative impact on your life, or you cannot stop, or it might not impact you negatively, but it may impact everybody around you. If you're drinking a bottle of wine every night, chances are people around you are going to be impacted by that, or your wallet will be if nothing else is. So you go with, well, you know, you start with drink a bottle of wine after work, and then you go, well, what, and you, oh God, I'm not perfect at this anyway, and you go, the associated feelings, how did that make you feel?
Would it be easier with food? Say what someone comes home and stuffs their mouth full of chocolate, would it
be it's all the same concept. It's exactly the same concept. And then you go back one step. What happened before that? What happened right before you drank the bottle of wine? Right before you drank the whole bottle of wine, you had one glass of wine. So it started with having a glass of wine. How did that make you feel? Were there any consequences to that? What happened before you did before you had one glass of wine? You opened the bottle of wine. How did that make you feel? What was going on when you did that? You're meant to go back about 17 steps, okay? So if you're doing that with that, yes, the first 3 or 4 will be about the bottle of wine. But if you go back, you may find that actually what happened was that you had a really bad night's sleep, that you woke up at 3 a.m, couldn't get back to sleep, that you were exhausted, you were running late for, you know, I don't know, I'm making up scenarios. But you hadn't dealt with that. So because you're chasing your tail all day, what happens is when you get to that point that you do X, whatever it is, whether you're overeating, whether you're eating the wrong foods, whether you've got, we'll all have a vice, whether you go home and disconnect from your family, jump straight into bed and go, I don't want to talk to my children, whatever, there'll be a problem, whatever it is. You've got to go right back. So not just looking at the first couple of behaviours, but going way, way back and working out what happened. I made you do this exercise when we went on a holiday once about having eaten because you have a vice with chocolate.
Pissed off that I had gone to the shop yet again after a fitness class and bought my chocolate. So Simone took me back to the steps before
17 steps of it, you know. Well, what happened before that? What happened before that? What happened before that? And while I really don't think Sheree has a big problem with chocolate or diet, it was just an interesting exercise for her to do something that I'd done on something just slightly more serious. It was an exercise given to me by my psychologist. It is a really simple tool for a behaviour that you want to change, because it's often habit driven. So we're all creatures of habit, and some of those habits are really good. I go to the gym 5 days a week, you know, I do this, I do that. Some of my habits are really bad. And we're all habits. If you're a smoker, obviously that's a bad habit, and you know, maybe you need to stop that, and so you've got to look at what you're doing and why you're doing it. But yeah, it's called a chain analysis. You can even print out worksheets if you Google them on whatever. So it's a psychology tool. So it is really interesting to look at why, because it's always, we call it we all say the straw that broke the camel's back. When people have a major fight with somebody, they'll be fighting. My husband and I had a huge fight once over a toilet seat. Well, really, we weren't actually that upset about the toilet seat. It would have been something else. So if you're looking backwards, you'll find you're just not dealing with the original stuff. Yeah,
and so look, I only made a small example there. Obviously, someone with mental health issues ongoing, there could be some big stuff, but it's just another tool. And Simone over the years has gained quite a large tool bag of tools, haven't you, Simone? So you can pull out all sorts of different ones.
Can I just say one thing that's really important, because I think mental wellness, for everybody, mental wellness, like looking after your physical health, looking after your, we want to be physically well, we want to be mentally well. And something I only learned about, been doing psychology stuff as a patient for quite a few years, but I only learnt this quite recently, was called, I can't remember, like a bank of positivity or something, because there's when a lot of bad things have happened to you over the years, whether it's past stuff or whether it's just recent years, you come to expect bad stuff, and that you can forget to look at the good stuff. So they will encourage you to build a bank of positivity. It's a little bit like a gratitude journal, I guess, but gratitude journals have come to sound like a bit of an airy-fairy thing. But a bank of positivity where you go, well, this morning I got 8 hours sleep. If that happened to me, that would be called a miracle. But yeah, so that's a positive. So you're just trying to build all these positive memories. So when we go to Maria Island and we have an amazing camping trip, when we did the Bay of Fires, they're things that I can add into my bank of positivity, things that you can look back on that was awesome. But it can be little things as well. I went and got a pedicure. Someone else would hate that. But if you get a pedicure and you love it, or your husband bought you a thing of roses, or your kids made you a little card that said, "I love you, Mummy." It can be little things. So your bank of positivity, and you don't need to write it down or anything. Like, it's useful to write it down if you are prone to focusing on the negative, but it's just moments of really observing, of feeling in the moment, in the positive, when the things happen, when you're watching the quolls on the deck on Bruny Island, playing around, when you're looking at the stars, just going, I just want to soak in this memory. When your kids give you that little card that says, "I love you, Mummy," and it melts your heart, or whatever, all those little things. So a bank of positivity is really important.
Almost sounds like the same thing I've been taught over the years, a love tank. So we all have a love tank. And if you get told good things all the time, you put points into your love, or it could be a love tank or love bank. But then when you get in negativity from people around you, it pulls out. And so then you just feel not nice. You don't feel good inside. So that can be the same when you're married as well. So if your partner keeps telling you they love you, well done, you make great meals, thanks for washing up, thank you for being a good mother, then you feel loved. But if you get told all the time, all not good stuff, you get it out and you feel depleted. So much along the same lines. So thanks for that. I think we need to probably wrap it up. So if you're watching this, hopefully you've been able to watch the whole thing, or at some stage can watch the whole thing. But this week is Mental Health Awareness Week. So a good chance for you to ask your friends or loved ones, "Are you okay?" And sometimes you won't know until you ask them. And hopefully, I know some people won't tell you the honest answer. It was only when Simone and I sat down on the gym floor one night that she told me the main struggle, like intense struggle she was having, and I wasn't aware of that until she shared it with me. So ask your loved ones, ask friends, even ask people that maybe you may know are going through a bit of a tough time and they may not have that much support. Are you okay? And make time then to hear their answer, because too many people go, "I'm fine," because they know you probably don't really want to know. But I think if we can care for one another in a heartfelt way. Yeah,
and I think it's really important. This is something I struggle with, because I think we all want to problem solve. So when people tell you your problems, you want to go, "Oh, well, do this, do that, do the other." But a lot of the time you can't. So, I mean, if you told me all about your diabetes, I can't solve your diabetes problem. If someone,
I don't have diabetes.
She doesn't have diabetes. But, it's just people relate to physical health and illness and wellness in a way they don't necessarily relate and understand mental stuff. But you don't have to problem solve. People just want to listen. People just want to listen.
And talk.
They just want you to listen.
Yeah, and want to talk.
Yeah, without judgment. And there is still, we are so much better than we were 50 years ago. And 100 years ago when women were put in psychiatric institutions for being in menopause. So we really have come a long way.
Goodness.
But they did that.
Yeah, that's awful.
So,
oh my goodness. Aren't you glad you're alive today and not that long ago? I'll tell you, it was a harsh day. And you're right, nobody did talk in the day. You just got over the death of the baby. You didn't even get to see the baby. You just got the baby taken away. We've come so much forward today.
But there is still stigma out there, and people still feel uncomfortable with it. If you are struggling with a mental health issue, you have to find someone to talk to. You need a friend, somebody to talk to. And there'll be people that you trust and there'll be people that you don't trust. Maybe you only feel comfortable talking to people online. I've had so many people writing to me through my blog and that sort of stuff. And I've talked to them, complete strangers, about the most intimate personal stuff of their lives. Some people I've become friends with. One of them is coming to spend Christmas with me this year. So you have to talk to somebody, and if you don't have a real life person, then find somebody on the internet, and we will put links up there, and get professional help if you need to. But you have to talk and don't isolate.
And one other thing I just want to ask you that's just come into mind, Simone, how many young girls of these days, so I grew up without the internet, without computers, so we didn't see all this stuff on computers, but lots of girls develop eating disorders today because they see people posting, oh, I got this way because of this diet, and so would you just say to those young girls out there that are being swayed by that and developing eating disorders from watching people on, if these people are not dietitians, ask them their qualifications. Maybe send a post and say, what are your qualifications? If it's just somebody from home going, I've got the perfect diet and I am slim like I am, don't forget they probably would be slim if they ate bucket loads of chocolate because they're young anyway. But you know what? I think you need to be careful of who you pay attention to. What
Absolutely,
would you say to those young girls?
Be careful of who you pay attention to. Back in our day, it was whatever's in the Dolly magazine. So I used to soak up. There was a magazine called Dolly for you young people.
It's still around.
Oh, is it? I don't know. Or Women's Weekly, whatever. I would soak up the diets, but now it is a lot more in your face. And it is sometimes it's harder to differentiate good advice from bad advice that's out there because Dr. Google will tell you everything. So yeah, if you're young and you want to go on a diet, don't do it. Diets don't work.
Don't what?
Don't work.
No.
Diets don't work.
Don't.
I mean, that's what it's scientifically shown. Study after study shows it. If you're celiac and you need to cut gluten out of your diet, that's very different to if you're going, I'm never going to eat bread and white pasta again because I'll get skinny if I don't do that. Well, hello, you will probably get skinny if you live on nothing but chocolate because you'll be really sick after a period of time and be, very malnourished and whatever. So anything that tells you to cut out a whole food group is a bad idea.
Don't do it. And the thing is, coming from a nurse, but I'm also a weight loss. I've done a weight loss coaching course. They would say to you that any diet will work because people, when they go on a diet, will cut out all the junk. So as long as you're cutting out the junk and just making sure that every mouthful you put into your mouth is nutrient dense, so as close to nature as it was. So if you're taking spinach leaves or whatever, you want them as close to nature as you can. So not all packaged up in different ways or powders that give you greens. Go for normal greens. Go to the shop, go to your fruit and veggie shop and grab real greens and real food that you can hold and cut up and put into your mouth, not stuff from packets. So my advice to you would be go as close to nature as what nature intended.
I used to have this lovely list, I wish I could find it, of what classified as food. And there was things like if your grandmother wouldn't recognise it, it's not food. If it comes through the window of your car, it's not food. If you can't pronounce most of the ingredients on the box, it's not food. Well, it's not proper food that you should be eating, so... You
can still eat. You know what? There's no foods that you can't eat. So I'm all
And that was my next point. Yeah, there's no... I mean, certainly when I went into... Because I did a specialised eating disorder clinic and there's a lot of anorexic girls in there and there's a huge focus on there's no such thing as good food or bad food. And they would take us out and we had to have cake and we had to have a burger and we had to have a soft drink because it's a huge mental thing. If you live on those things... Obviously, it's a problem, but I knew a lady got really sick from eating too many carrots because she thought that might cure her breast cancer because she'd read some random thing. She just turned orange from having too much carotene in her in her system. So anything to excess is bad. If you're allergic or you have a reason to be cutting something out, obviously that's different. But
So, if you're someone young or older at home and you get swayed by everyone on the internet, on Facebook and stuff, showing you their way of doing things, I think some good rules to come back to are eating things as much in its natural state as you can, try and avoid things from an actual packet, and allow yourself to splurge. If I was going to be invited out to a meal tonight and it was everything you could eat for this price, do you know what? I'm going to eat every single thing there and this is just me. I want to enjoy it all, so I will eat it all. But I'm not going to do that every day. So to me, chocolate and treats are okay, but only here and there because, you're not going to want to eat chocolate like 2 cakes of chocolate every single day and a whole thing of ice cream because I'm soon going to become that person I don't want to be. And I want my body to live in health. So if I want my body to live in health, I need to feed it good stuff so that it can do for me what I want it to do. And if I wanted to strength train or climb a mountain, or I want to do whatever, or go kayaking and pull my kayak miles down the beach, I need it to be healthy and strong. I need my bones and muscles and my whole body to function, and my cells at their very DNA to be healthy and good. And so therefore, I'm going to keep my body healthy most of the time. But hey, I love my corn chips and I love my chocolate, but I don't eat them all day.
I think I've spoken to a few psychologists and dietitians and stuff. If you're young, if you're 15, 16, 20, whatever, you're young at 20, and you're going down the path of dieting all the time, then you're setting yourself up for disordered eating. There is a difference between disordered eating and an eating disorder, but it doesn't take long to go from one to the other. Yeah. And obviously people can recover from eating disorders, which are a huge issue, and anorexia is the mental illness with the highest mortality rate, and even bulimia has quite a high mortality rate compared to a lot of other mental illnesses, so they're huge. But you are setting yourself up for disordered eating, whether or not that, So just, I know it's really hard, and we must seem so old to 16-year-olds if they're watching, but just don't do it. If I could go back to my 16-year-old self, I would go, just eat whatever you want, take no notice of your mother. I took no notice of my mother anyway. But yeah, she tried to restrict my food intake all my life, or would comment on it. Came from a place of good intent. My grandmother did the same thing, but it created an eating disorder, and my sister also had an eating disorder. So
it's a very interesting thing. Sometimes Simone and I will talk, and my childhood was all about stuff from the garden, but then my mum bought chocolate and bickies.
Yeah, like we had a really healthy, we were vegetarian, we lived on lentils.
But they were not allowed anything that was not unhealthy. So it was this real thing to just eat healthy.
Just to be fair, my mother would bake, so she would make cheesecakes and biscuits and stuff, but yeah, we didn't have lollies and that sort of stuff. We didn't even have mashed potato, I don't think.
So it's a very interesting thing. And if I'd say to somebody out there that's quite young, I worked in paediatrics for years, and the girls that came in quite early because they'd lost a fair bit of weight, their parents would have seen them losing weight. If you can get on to eating disordered thoughts early, like Simone said, it can be cured, and the earlier you get onto it, the better. And so the earlier you get seen, it doesn't evolve into a set, fast eating disorder. And even then, there's help available. There's eating disorder clinics out there.
Yep.
Get help early. Please get help early, because you don't want it to develop into something that's going to take your life. And my friend in Perth a couple of years ago died from anorexia nervosa, and she's my age. And I just, it still is very sad to me that there could have been another way, but it got to the point where it couldn't change for her. It was so embedded and deeply ingrained. And so please get help early if you do feel that way and you feel like things are out of control. Talk to somebody, talk to your parents, talk to somebody, because there's help. And if you're older, there's help as well. So please, I think the first step, Simone, would be your GP and then referral from there.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah. Even if you're not sure, if somebody tells you that there's a problem with your eating, I've known a lot of people go through 12-step programs with alcohol and drugs. If someone's telling you you've got a problem, because you're sometimes the last person to think you've got a problem. So if someone says your eating or your exercising, your alcohol consumption, your drug use, whatever, is problematic, take notice of those people. Go to your GP. GP obviously is your first step. You can't access further services without those. And if you don't like your GP, get a different GP. Whatever. You've got to find people with mental health stuff. You really have to find people that you can connect with, that you feel confident and comfortable sitting there telling them, this is how I really feel.
Yeah, that's good.
And if you can get things early, then it's like anything else. If you're pre-diabetic with type 2 diabetes and you start exercising and you change your diet and you do all the things that you need to do, you can turn that around. I mean, even people that are full on type 2 diabetes, I'm sure you've seen turned around and not require medication, or people on blood pressure medication through changing stuff. It's the same with your mental health. If you're going down a rabbit hole, fish yourself back out before you're right down the bottom. You can get back up from the bottom, but the further down you go, the harder it is.
So what you and I have both been looking at over the last... Sorry, we are about to...
We're way over time.
Is that the way we feel does not define what we can do. So the way we feel, feelings will come and go, and sometimes our feelings will be so skewed. Don't rely on how you feel as to actually how things are. So you may feel really bad. Yes, you do need to get help because you're not functioning well, but you can also make the decision to start to make some changes. So even that walk, as you said, to the mailbox or down the road to the park, do one lap around the oval and come back home. Get yourself out, get yourself dressed in the morning. If you like to dance, put on your favourite song and dance and feel good. I'm about to do a dance thing in a school for Mental Health Awareness Week at the end of the year at a major school near where I live. I'll probably have 1,000 students all following me in dance, but dance is great because what's good, it opens you up, it opens you out. You know, you're reaching up, you're opening it. So often people, when they're down and depressed, will be closed and like almost want to curl up in the fetal position. So do something that drives you today, that makes you feel good, that you may not feel like it, but do it, and do it then the next day, and make a purposeful action to do it the next day, and it becomes a lifestyle change. It becomes a habit.
Yeah, it becomes a habit. And I know there'll be people listening going, but I have this problem. You've also had people not come to the gym because they're not fit enough or they're too fat to go to the gym.
People make excuses.
You know, so but there are people with physical limitations, and maybe walking to the letterbox is not even an option for you. If you've got really bad fibromyalgia and you walk with a cane or something, maybe that's not an option. But it doesn't mean that you give up. There is always something more that you can do. I mean, as a nurse, I know you've seen people if you just get people rolling side to side in bed, they're doing something. So you figure out what you can do, and if you don't know what you can do, then you find people that can help you. If you can walk to the letterbox and you're fit and well enough that you can do up your shoelaces, well, then you're way ahead of a lot of people. So walk to the letterbox and do it. Don't wait till you feel like you can do it. And I know that a lot of people will sign up for something. You know, how many people sign up for gym memberships because there was a special on? Wow, I saved all this money. But then they don't feel like going. But you have to go. So you haven't saved any money if you sign up for a gym membership and you don't turn up. You have to go. And if you wait until you feel like it, if I waited until I felt like doing the housework, well, my house would be very dirty.
And I think plan at the start of the week what you're going to eat for meals. If you're planned, then you're not as likely to fail on that area. You know what I mean? No, if we fail to plan, we plan to fail. So plan at the start of the week. Plan, okay, if that's what you're going to do right now, because it's not become a habit, it's not become a lifestyle change, you've got to mentally think about how I'm going to make changes for myself. Then you log out the week to come. Monday, I'm going to do a walk. Even if it's a 5-minute walk, you do a walk. Monday, I'm also going to go to the shop on Sunday, and I'm going to buy my foods that I love, but I know that are healthy for my body. Have a look at gut health too. Get onto some things, because there's a big link between gut health and depression. So get onto some good gut health talks online. Go gut health and depression. You'll find some amazing courses and amazing things out there that link those two together. So diet's huge, moving is huge, making your body feel good in so many ways is good. If you love camping, you haven't been camping for 3 years, maybe take yourself or find someone, ask around, and find someone that would love to go camping with you. So make some purposeful changes and drop them into the week to come, because then they'll start to change the way you feel as well.
Yeah. And the very last thing, because we've been here for 90 minutes, sorry about that, is that when people are very mentally unwell and their self-care has gone out the window, they won't even have a shower. They won't change their clothes, whatever. So if all that you can manage today is to go, I'm going to have a shower, and brush my teeth, then that's a really good step. Make that your daily thing. The next day, after a week, if you're trying to change habits, you want to do them one at a time, and you want them to go for at least a week. If you try and change 27 things at once, then you'll forget all of them after a week. Just little things. So,
yeah. If you have been thinking for a while you'd like to get fitter, we have an online program called Spice Strong. If you go to spicefitness.com, you'll find that we've made it so affordable. I was asked a while back by my husband, what would I specifically like? Because I know that we do good stuff with strength training. I said I want it to be really affordable so many people around the world can get onto it. So it's $4.95, but roughly a week. So it's about $19.95 a month. So it works out to no more than the price of a cup of tea or coffee a week. And we have made it a great program with some mindset stuff in those first 6 weeks and taking care of yourself, but also sending through 3 workouts a week, and you can choose whether you join the beginner, intermediate or advanced. So it's a great little program.
And I will say, because sometimes people go, like just my point again, they go, oh, I can't do it, I've got this problem. But Sheree had put up some information for somebody that needed some help for her husband who couldn't lie down flat. So he'd had a stroke. So he was able to do exercises lying in his recliner. So you don't need to be fit and healthy to join the program.
No, you don't. So because we have a beginner, intermediate and advanced, you can join in the beginner. And some of those, if you don't like going on the floor, you can do on a bed or a couch. And otherwise it's all stand-up stuff. And so maybe think about joining that. It's as easy as going to our website, spicefitness.com. Going onto there, you'll see stories from ladies who have loved training, but you can join up there. It's not hard to do, and we've made the course really easily able to be move around inside the course, and we'll have a group chat in there. We've got all sorts of headspace things in there. It's awesome. You can attach it to your TV if you want to watch it on a TV, but just to promote that while I'm here, because I think the people that are on it at the moment are loving it. So we'd love to see you on there, and as we go along, we'll also develop a course for mental health as well that will run over a period of weeks, where we support people out there in their journey of just trying to get to that place where they're functioning well again, along with your psychologist or whoever else you're seeing, but it'll be a supportive group. Well, I just want to thank you, Simone, today.
Thank you. You can see why we have to go away for a week to go camping. We like to talk.
We've got a lot that we can share. So I hope you've enjoyed that out there. And please, if you don't feel that you're able to deal with life, please talk to somebody. And if there's nobody to talk to, go to your GP. If you don't have a good GP, ask around your friends and get a good GP who you can sit down with. I've got a really good GP. She's so much about mental health. So find yourself a good GP, and please take care of yourself. And don't forget, if you're feeling good, ask your friends if they're okay. So we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, Simone.
Thank you.
See you. I'll just have to turn this on.
Yeah.